There's a moment in the deep Philippine jungle when even the most battle-hardened Marine stops walking and listens, not because an order was given, not because a radio crackled, but because a Filipino tracker 3 steps ahead of him went completely still. And that stillness, that ancient, bone-deep awareness, meant the difference between an ambush and a ghost. This is not a story that made headlines. It was never meant to. The men who lived it signed no books and gave no interviews. But the mission files, the testimonies buried inside debriefs, and accounts of soldiers who came home tell a picture that the world overlooked, that some of the most advanced military forces on the planet walked into one of the most dangerous jungles in Asia and survived because of men who carried machetes and read the earth like a language. The year was 2002, and the southern Philippines had become one of the most volatile counterterrorism theaters in Southeast Asia. Abu Sayyaf, a brutal armed group with links to international terror networks, had entrenched itself deep in the island jungles of Basilan and the Sulu archipelago. Hostages had been taken. Aid workers had been executed. The Philippine government, facing mounting pressure, accepted assistance under Operation Enduring Freedom, Philippines, a mission that would bring more than 1,200 United States Special Operations personnel into the region. Among them were units in the Marine Corps, tasked with advising Philippine counterparts while supporting intelligence-driven operations in terrain that had defeated foreign military forces for over a century. Nobody told the Americans just how unforgiving that jungle would be. The briefings in Manila described Basilan Island as dense, triple-canopy jungle with limited aerial visibility, high humidity, and geography that sheltered guerrillas for generations. What no PowerPoint slide could convey was the living, shifting character of that jungle. The way sound dies inside it. The way trails vanish overnight when the undergrowth breathes back to cover them. The way a single wrong step can trigger a booby trap or drop a man into a ravine that does not appear on any map. American forces arrived with satellite imagery, thermal optics, and some of the finest infantry training in the world. But the jungle did not care about any of that. It had its own rules, and those rules were written in a language that only certain men had spent their entire lives learning to read. The Filipino Scout Rangers have been fighting in these jungles since 1950. Founded in the shadow of the Hook Rebellion as a specialized counter-guerrilla force, the First Scout Ranger Regiment was modeled after the legendary American Alamo Scouts and the 6th Ranger Battalion of the Second World War. But where those units operated in the Pacific Theater, the Scout Rangers refined their craft in terrain that was uniquely their own, the dense, humid jungles of Luzon, Mindanao, and the Southern Islands. Their training course ran 6 months and was brutal by any standard, combining jungle survival, small unit tactics, escape and evasion, and something that no Western military academy formally taught in the same way: tracking. Not the kind of tracking you read about in field manuals. The kind passed down through generations, muscle memory as much as method. When the American Marines landed on Basilan in 2002, they were paired with Filipino Scout Rangers and local guides who knew this particular stretch of jungle with the intimacy of people who had grown up running through it. The Marines brought firepower. The Filipinos brought something the mission could not function without: the ability to see what was invisible, a displaced leaf on a forest path, the faint smell of what smoke carried on a morning wind, the silence of birds in a canopy that should have been alive with sound. These were not observations that came from training manuals. They came from a lifetime of immersion, from childhood spent in the same terrain the enemy was now using to hide. One Scout Ranger, according to account from Joint Patrol debriefs, stopped a column of Americans cold on a jungle trail, pointing downward at a patch of earth that, to every Marine present, looked like nothing at all. Beneath the surface was a buried pressure plate. The patrols went deep, deeper than comfort allowed, and deeper than command sometimes agreed with. But that was the nature of the hunt. Abu Sayyaf operated in cells that fragmented and dispersed the moment they sensed contact. Pinning them down required following trails that existed only to those who knew how to find them. Trails that wound through secondary jungle, across rivers swollen by daily tropical rain, through villages where fear was a currency and information was traded in whispers. The American Marines trained for jungle warfare, but the Philippine jungle was a category of its own. The vegetation was denser, the humidity higher, the ground more unpredictable. Marines who had served in Central America and the Pacific described Basilan as unlike anything they had encountered. The heat was not just a temperature, it was a pressure. It got inside your lungs, your equipment, your decision-making. What kept the patrols cohesive was the consistency of the Filipino Trackers at the front. These men did not carry the same volume of equipment as the Marines. They moved lighter, lower to the ground, and with an economy of motion that the Americans found initially perplexing and eventually awe-inspiring. A tracker would pause, crouch, examine the angle at which a twig had been snapped, determine from the moisture level inside the break whether it happened hours ago or minutes ago, and then stand and give a direction with absolute certainty. During one particularly tense operation in which patrol lost contact with its designated path due to weather and darkness, a Filipino guide named only as Corporal Santos in the declassified patrol report navigated the entire unit to a safe extraction point using only the stars, the sound of water, and what he described through an interpreter as the smell of the trees changing. Every Marine on that patrol came home. Command took note. After the first series of joint operations on Basilan, senior American officers attached to Joint Task Force 510 began formally requesting Filipino Scout Rangers for integration into patrol elements rather than in a purely advisory capacity. The trackers were not attached as support. They were placed at point, the most dangerous position in any patrol, the first to make contact with the enemy, the first to identify a threat, the first to die if something went wrong. That the Scout Rangers accepted this role without hesitation said everything about who they were. That the American command asked for it said everything about what those first weeks in the jungle had revealed. Firepower, technology, and training meant very little if the patrol never found the enemy, or worse, if the enemy found patrol first. The intelligence war inside the jungle was as important as the kinetic one. Abu Sayyaf had embedded lookouts in the vegetation along approaches they expected government and coalition forces to use. These lookouts communicated with handheld radios and mobile phones, alerting the main group when patrols were detected. To defeat this early warning system, the Filipino trackers chose routes that no military planner would have chosen from a map, routes that crossed terrain considered impassable, that moved through areas with no obvious cover to a western eye, but which the trackers understood offered natural concealment superior to anything man-made. They were, in essence, using the same instincts Abu Sayyaf used, because they had grown up in the same landscape. Back at the Joint Operations Base, the debrief after that 4-day patrol lasted 6 hours. American intelligence officers went through the communications hall from the captured camp, while the Scout Rangers cleaned their equipment and ate. At one point, a senior American officer reportedly walked over to where the lead tracker was seated, said nothing for a moment, and then shook his hand. The interpreter later told the tracker what the officer had said privately before approaching, that the capture would not have happened without him, that the imagery analysis, the drone feeds, and the signals intelligence had all pointed to the wrong grid square. It was the tracker's decision to deviate from the planned route on day 3, following a physical sign the drones could not see, that had found the camp. The officer called it the most effective piece of intelligence collection he had witnessed in the entire deployment. It required no batteries. The Filipino trackers who served alongside American forces in those operations represented a living repository of knowledge that no institution had formally cataloged, but which had been passed from generation to generation through practice, through hunting, through the rhythms of rural life in the Philippine Islands. Many of the Scout Rangers came from farming or fishing families in Mindanao and Visayas. They had hunted wild boar as teenagers, navigated coastal mangroves by boat and by foot, read weather by the behavior of seabirds and the smell of the tide. Their education in the jungle was not a curriculum. It was a childhood. And when they wore a uniform and stood at the point of an American-led patrol in 2002, that childhood was the most valuable asset anyone in that formation carried. American forces formally recognized this during the course of Operation Enduring Freedom, Philippines. The RAND Corporation, in a research report examining the 12-year joint operation, noted that American Special Operations Forces assessed Philippine SOF units as among the most proficient of any Asian forces they had worked with, specifically highlighting their deep familiarity with the terrain and their ability to integrate tactical knowledge with physical environment in ways that complemented American technological advantages. The report noted that the combination of Filipino tracking expertise and American intelligence capabilities created a force multiplier effect that neither component could have achieved alone. A thermal drone can locate heat signatures. It cannot tell you whether those signatures belong to civilians cooking their evening meal or to armed men setting an ambush. A tracker who grew up 2 villages away can. There were moments when the mission almost failed. Not through lack of courage or equipment, but through the kind of near misses that never make it into the official record. A patrol that took a wrong turn in deteriorating weather and spent the night in a section of jungle that the trackers knew without being told was a known route used by Abu Sayyaf supply runners. They lay still in the undergrowth for 7 hours. Not a man spoke. The trackers communicated by touch. A hand pressed to a forearm, the slow pressure of fingers indicating direction, the absence of movement communicating more than any whispered order. The enemy passed within 60 meters of concealed patrol twice during that night. No contact was made. At dawn, the trackers led the patrol out using a drainage channel that appeared on no map. The Marines behind them followed in a line, watching every step the tracker in front placed, placing their own feet in exactly the same spots. Subscribe to our channel for more amazing and interesting videos and drop a comment. See you in our next video is